Hello, dearies. Welcome to the
Paradox
store. The new
DLC
are in short supply, so please form an orderly...
Are there any left?
There may be one. It's $500. You have no choice of
game, and it might break on release.
Shut up and take my money.
Stellaris, like many Paradox games, now comes with a phenomenal host of DLC to get. If you're starting out, it is definitely a challenge to know which DLC are important, which are worth it, which are even useful. I hope in this video I can go some way to illuminating you and basically letting you know which DLC I think are fantastic and which you shouldn't touch. Like, really, don't touch it, don't look at it, just move on. I'd like to preface this by saying that I do have pretty much all of the DLC, and I've been playing Stellaris since launch in 2016, so now for me it was actually quite eye-opening to go back and look at which components of what I kind of view as the game are actually part of DLC that some people, obviously some of you guys, won't have, and you won't really know what's going on here. Yeah, so I do have most of the DLC. I've picked them up over the years as they've come out mostly, but some of the time on sale. Now, of course, right now it's June the 29th, the Steam summer sale's on. I think the Paradox summer sale is also still on. I think we've still got another day on that one. But the Steam summer sale is on until the 8th of July, I want to say. And that means now is the perfect opportunity if you want to get some DLC or even the base game to pick that up. But of course, there are so many DLC now for Stellaris. There are 13 in total. So which ones are the most important? Which ones should we get first? Which are going to actually improve the game in the best way? You know, what's going to be the most cost effective to pick up? Well, I've had a look, I've ordered them, I've got a tier list. I'm going to start at the bottom and we're going to work our way through to the top, and hopefully I can explain to you why these DLC are in the order they're in. I hope you find this interesting. Let's dive in. So there are 4 different kind of categories that I've tried to split up and assign to each of these DLC. Now, these categories are what the DLC brings to you. We've got features, which I would say is arguably the most important thing, and that's new gameplay mechanics mainly. Something new and important you wouldn't otherwise get to do without that DLC. The next is content. That's really important. That is the expansion of an existing mechanic that usually exists in the base game, or some new piece of basically content or story that they've added in with that DLC. After that, we've got unique playstyle. So this is where the DLC gives the player the opportunity to play in a different and unique way that breaks the rules of Stellaris in some way, or does something quite interesting. And finally, the 4th category is cosmetic. This is a component where the main thing you're getting here is something that looks new, looks different. It's cosmetic. Let's start at the bottom, something I've labeled the F tier. Now, these DLC add very little to the game at the moment. I really want to stress that, at the moment. Both of these 2 DLC, with the new LEM update that's coming out soon, they are going to be getting, hopefully, some changes, so they will also get the unique playstyle category as well. But these 2 DLC are humanoids and plantoids. What you get from these, you get some portraits, you get some ship sets. That's about it. You purely get cosmetic changes. They're going to add in some new civics, hopefully, with the new LEM. We don't know what they are yet, but at the moment, they are the bottom tier. I don't even own the Plantoids DLC. Please don't shoot me. I've just never been interested in getting it. It was actually, I think when Nemesis came out, they were giving it out for free as long as you spent 30 minutes doing something and filled in a quiz. And even then, I couldn't be bothered to do that to get this DLC. So, you know, if you can find what it looks like by going to the page, by looking at this content. You can see what the portraits and ship set is like. I wouldn't recommend getting this unless you're really at the point where there's nothing else left for you to get. If you're wanting to do something like the Star Trek fantasy, I'd actually recommend getting a mod over buying the Humanoids DLC at this point, to be perfectly honest. Star Trek New Horizons is great. You can it's actually very in depth. But so, you know, if that's what you want to do, I'd recommend a mod over this DLC, to be perfectly honest. What do we have next? Well, next one up I'm going to show is Necroids, and that's in the C tier. So why is Necroids all the way down here at the bottom? Well, what does Necroids add? So Necroids, basically you get a unique playstyle, so you get to play as a Necroid species, you get the Necroid origin, you get some nice portraits. There are some cool portraits. You get Jeff, fantastic, but and you get a ship set. But at the end of the day, it's just cosmetic with a small change. You could play Stellaris without this DLC and never even know it existed. To be honest, it's not something that is really necessary. It's cool if you get it, and it's a cool one to play with, but it's not really, I would say, something that's very important to the game. And following on from Necroids, very similar, is Lithoids. Now, actually, I did think about moving Lithoids up here, but given the similarities to Necroids in that it's purely, again, cosmetic, you're getting a ship set, a portrait set, plus some gameplay changes and some unique origins. The origin, the variety in the origins you can get here, I would say that this origin is a little bit more interesting. You can play as Terravor, but again, it's actually not something that you really need to have the full Stellaris experience. Now, Lithoids is actually a DLC I didn't buy until after Necroids was released, interestingly. So, you know, that's something I played with for, I'm going to say, 3 years, and I didn't really notice that I was missing it, to be quite honest. So, again, if you're interested in it, go out, get it. You know, don't let me tell you what to do. I'm purely trying to give you my insight and opinion on which here are the good ones to look out for. And now we get to the B tier. Now the first DLC in the B tier, I actually really struggled placing this one. So the first one here is going to be Nemesis. Now this one's a real mix actually in terms of what it gives you. So you're going to get some content, it fleshes out some other features. You're going to get some cosmetics, there's a new ship set in there. You're going to get some new features. For instance, there is the Crisis mechanic, there's the Imperium mechanics, and on top of that I almost included the unique playstyle in here, simply because playing as the Crisis is definitely a very unique playstyle. But as anyone could do it after the start of the game, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to include that. But I did really struggle on putting this here in the mid tier. The reason it's there is that whilst I really enjoy this DLC and the features it brings, the Imperium, the Crisis, the Galactic Custodian, I think they're fantastic. They do really build on other elements already present in the game that you're going to get from other DLC. So without those building blocks, I can't see how Nemesis is going to be particularly useful to you and particularly interesting. Next is Ancient Relics. So this one I put in the B tier as well. So what do you get with this? You get the new archaeology system. That is actually less interesting than really it sounds, however, because what you basically get here is some click-throughs, and you just have to wait for a while for things to happen. You do get some benefits from that. You get minor artifacts and relics, which is pretty cool. You also have 2 new precursors. That's pretty cool as well, so that's extra content. And then on top of that, you get relic worlds, which are disrepaired ecumenopolis, so ecumenopoli that have fallen into disuse. Overall, it's a nice DLC. It's not really essential for kind of your main Stellaris experience, I would say. Megacorp, now this is an interesting one. So I almost put it up in the A tier, but really I didn't feel that it's not a DLC that you, again, really need to be able to have that full Stellaris experience. It's very important, it's very good. For instance, with this you can build ecumenopoli, and because you can get the perk, and on top of that you can play as Megacorps as the unique playstyle. However, in multiplayer, Megacorps can be slightly underwhelming because people do have to agree to trade with you before you can use any of your unique abilities. In single player, they're much more interesting, but still not massively necessary. You also get some new mega structures added, which is pretty cool, but overall, this is comfortably in the B tier, I'm going to say. The final DLC for the B tier is Synthetic Dawn. Now, Synthetic Dawn is interesting. You get to play with machine empires. That's pretty cool. That's definitely a unique and interesting way of playing, which is great to have in there. However, aside from that, there's AI Rebellion added in, which is a bit of a weird event chain that you mostly don't want to have happen because it's a bit game breaking sometimes. Really can't throw your empire back for no good reason. And there's no way of puzzling out of it to get better. Half your pops will almost certainly just die. But apart from that, playing as Machine Empire is cool. Again, this one pretty comfortably in the B tier. Now we're up to the A tier. We're up to some of the really quite meaty DLC. So let's start with Apocalypse. What does Apocalypse bring to the table? Why is it in the A tier? Apocalypse lets you build Colossus, and a Colossus spaceship is the Death Star. Not only is it the Death Star, it's a Death Star full of flavor. So you can have a Death Star which encapsulates a planet in a shield. You can have a Death Star which converts an entire planet to spiritualist. You can get a Death Star which simply, like the Borg, assimilates an entire planet in one go. That's pretty cool. You also get Marauder Empires, so there's a bit of content here too. There's features and content. Marauder Empires, and you get this event chain or series of events that can happen in the mid-game. So kind of a mid-game crisis, which is the Great Khan can rise up from one of these Marauder neutral empires and attempt to conquer the entire galaxy. And that can be quite a powerful and threatening event to have happen in the mid-game. So that's pretty cool. On top of that, you get Titans. Titans are a ship class one above battleships. They have bonuses they apply to the whole fleet. You know, all in all, this DLC is pretty good. It's got some really good aspects that add to warfare. If warfare is what you're interested in, if you want more fleshed out options for your warfare in Stellaris, and you want to have more components to bring together in a unique and different way, Apocalypse is probably the way to go. So on the flip side of that, we have Federations. What does Federations bring? Well, first off, Federations brings a Galactic United Nations, or the Galactic Senate, Galactic Council, whatever you want to call it. It's called the Galactic Community in the game. But what does that do? Well, you get a bunch of laws that you can pass, which are going to affect all sorts of things in the game. They're very interesting. They're fleshed out in more detail when you buy Nemesis on top, because you get an end goal and an end path there. But in and of themselves, they're definitely a very interesting aspect of the game that I really enjoy. Federations is the diplomacy DLC to Apocalypse's combat DLC. You also get new mechanics for Federations. You get to build up laws within your Federation. You get 5 different types of Federation with unique abilities that will change the way that your conglomerate of empires interact. On top of that, you're going to be getting the Juggernaut, which is essentially a flying star base with a shipyard. It's pretty awesome. You're going to get a new mega structure, the Mega Shipyard. The Mega Shipyard is really great when you are fighting the endgame crisis. Being able to produce 20 ships at a time at plus 100% speed cannot be understated. On top of that, you get a whole batch of origins, and origins are really important. They're an important aspect at the beginning of your game when you're designing your empires, and you get a fundamentally large number here. You're going to be getting the ability to start off as a federation. There's a couple of types. You can start off on a planet that's about to explode. You can start off on a ring world, on a habitat. You can start off as the scion of a fallen empire. There are loads of different unique ways that this DLC changes the game. Federations is great. It's definitely in the A tier. And the final one in A tier, I didn't really feel this had enough meat to go up into the S tier, but it is definitely a very good one, and that is Leviathan. So what does Leviathans include? You're going to be getting enclaves. Those are special outposts. There are science versions, there are trade versions, there are artist versions, and those outposts, you can interact with them, you can get special things from them. They're quite cool. On top of that, you're going to be getting Leviathans, which are basically giant space creatures that roam the galaxy, and your empire will have to defeat them. They're, at the beginning of the game, massively powerful, completely untouchable, but as you grow, you will find you can fight them. And then finally, the real reason I put this in the A tier rather than the B tier is that it includes an event chain, which is the War in Heaven, which is kind of a mid to late game crisis. Not a late game crisis in and of itself, but kind of an event chain that lets 2 fallen empires awaken and start fighting it out. And as an empire in the middle, you can either join one of those 2 fallen empires, or join a league of non-aligned nations and attempt to fight your way into a kind of as a neutral party. That's really cool. That's really fun. It's a really great mechanic to have in there. It's a great piece of content. Overall, Leviathans really does bring some interesting aspects to Stellaris. So what's in the S tier? What is it we've saved up to put up here? Well, starting off with the grandfather of all Stellaris DLC, it was a phenomenally large amount of content that this DLC brought and still brings. It's Utopia. Before I start running through what you're going to get from Utopia, I'm going to say this is your starting point. Without this DLC, you're kind of playing the trial version of Stellaris. It misses out so many important features that I would say almost should be part of the base game. But what does it bring? First off, megastructures. You can build megastructures. You can build ring worlds, Dyson spheres, science nexus, sentry arrays. Fantastic. Next, habitats. You can build space habitats, mini kind of planets, but above planets that you can inhabit your people on. Cool. After that, we've got a fully fleshed out ascension perk. So you're going to get the ascension paths. So importantly there, you've got the psionic ascension path, synthetic ascension path, and biological ascension path. Those three ascension paths are going to kind of be your mid-game, what your civilization aims towards, and how it changes and matures over the course of a game of Stellaris. That's fantastic for both playing the game for the game's sake, but also from a role-play perspective. It's really cool. On top of that, you get your hands on Fanatic Purifiers. They're a unique way of playing the game. It's a unique play style. It's pretty cool. On top of that, you're going to get Hive Minds, another unique way of playing the game. So basically, a Hive Mind is in essence a kind of a conglomerate of aliens who are all the same species connected. Who knows? Telepathically, I don't know. You don't know. But whatever your head kind of wants to say it is. On top of that, you're going to get new features for slavery, new features for purging. This is the mother and father of all Stellaris DLC. I have to recommend this one. The best DLC that you can get. And finally, what is the other S tier we've got here? Well, it's not quite as amazing as Utopia, but it's definitely where Utopia, I would say, is your first port of call. Distant Stars is your second. So what do you get with Distant Stars? Well, you get a whole host of new events, anomalies, planets, unique planets. You're going to get the enclaves, a curator enclaves, if you don't already have Leviathans, which if you're buying this second, you're not going to have Leviathans. You get some Leviathans that you don't get in Leviathans. How many times can I say that word? And on top of that, you get the L-Gate cluster, the L-Gates, which is an interesting and kind of unique mechanic where you can unlock a new kind of galactic region, which is away from the central galaxy. I'm not going to spoil what happens there, but basically it can be terrifying, it can be fantastic. It's a doorway that was meant to remain shut, probably. But yeah, so Distant Stars, it's a very content-heavy DLC, which really, really, really improves your base game. And you know, if you're only going to buy 2 DLC, Utopia and Distant Stars are going to be those 2 DLC. Now, of course, please don't listen to me if you think there's a DLC that you absolutely love and you want to get. I know that I really, really enjoyed Synthetic Dawn when it came out, and I still really like that DLC, but I have had to put it down in the B tier here. But I do really like that one. I think it's really cool. So obviously, you know, take this with a pinch of salt. The main thing to look at is the features you're going to be getting and the mechanics they'll bring. That's what I would say. And I hope I've been able to help kind of explore what the DLC can bring to your game of Stellaris, especially in this time of summer sales. And if you're not watching it during a summer sale, just wait. There are sales all the time. Please, 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 if you disagree with this tier list, if there's something that you think is absolutely wrong, let me know in the comments section. You know, I put this together and I think it's good, but I've struggled with a few of them to place them. So if you've got any feedback for me, please leave a comment. As ever, if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to see more content from this channel, please subscribe.